As requested by Movie Club member Brian over on my Patreon, here's my review of the 2010 A Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Is a plot synopsis really necessary for this one? The much maligned A Nightmare on Elm Street remake. A remake that, even among remakes of that era, is particularly crapped upon. But is it really that bad? By 2010, just about all the classics had been put through the remake ringer. You had some good remakes, Dawn of the Dead, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, When a Stranger Calls, and you had some bad remakes. Prom Night, The Stepfather, The Hitcher, April Fool's Day. So when it was finally announced that A Nightmare on Elm Street would be next on the remake chopping block, the reaction from what I remember was pretty meh. Going to see this movie was kind of like going to the dentist to get a cavity filled. You knew it wasn't going to be a pleasant experience, but it had to be done. Shortly before the film's release, I got my hands on Wesley Strick's Screenplay. Keep in mind, Strick had written movies like Wolf, Arachnophobia, and the Cape Fear remake that Martin Scorsese directed. What I'm saying here is, Strick is no slouch at screenwriting. Strick's screenplay wasn't perfect, but it got me excited to see the movie because it introduced a whole new angle to the Elm Street mythos. Is Freddy the victim? So going into the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I was pretty excited. However, that excitement was short-lived. Reviews for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, especially among horror fans, were overwhelmingly negative. I reviewed the movie way back when, and my review was one of the very few not outright negative ones. There were things I liked about the movie then, and those things I still like about the movie now. I think my biggest gripe with the Nightmare on Elm Street remake is just how generic it is. This feels like a movie authored by 15 different screenwriters. Because it was. This feels like a movie directed by a guy who had no interest whatsoever in directing a Nightmare on Elm Street film. Because it was. This feels like a movie that was being tinkered with by the studio right up to the point of its release. Because it was. The fact that this movie has any redeeming qualities whatsoever is something. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 offers nothing new. Even the worst remakes from this era at least took the source material and added their own spin to it. Not here. We get the classic shot of Freddy coming out of the wall above Nancy's bed, but it's a CGI mess that looks truly awful. We get the classic bathtub sequence in which Freddy's glove emerges from between Nancy's legs while she's having a sleepy soak, but the whole sequence just feels so copy and paste. The death of Tina plays out pretty much exactly the same as it does in the original, only it's quicker and far less bloody. All these sequences do is remind you of how much better the original film is, and how limp this movie is. When it comes to major bones of contention with this movie, it seems that at the very top is Freddy. On paper, casting Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Kreuger sounded like an inspired choice. Haley had recently been nominated for an Oscar, stole the show as Rorschach in Watchmen, and had a juicy role in Martin Scorsese's critically acclaimed Shutter Island. However, the Freddy Kreuger he adopted was a pale comparison to the character horror fans already knew and loved. What's worse, this new iteration of Kreuger was lacking in a big way when it came to personality, or anything in the way of being even remotely intimidating. If Haley had been given better material to work with, maybe he could have done something with the character. Maybe he could have made it his own, and who knows, maybe he tried, but the producers, not wanting to take risks, told him to stick with what was on the page, and that wasn't much. Rooney Mara is another victim of bad writing here. Mara, like Haley, is an Oscar nominee with an impressive body of work. Granted, she had big shoes to fill, but this iteration of Nancy is half asleep from the start. She's an artist and a little emo. That's all we get. This is Nancy from A Nightmare on Elm Street, for God's sake, and that's all you give her? Making this film was such a bad experience for Mara that she reportedly almost gave up acting altogether. But the biggest sin of the 2010 A Nightmare on Elm Street remake is ditching the "is Freddy the victim" angle almost as soon as it introduced it. Just imagine how that would have changed things, the conflict it would create. It makes Freddy a more complex character and complicates the simple good versus evil dynamic. Freddy was burned alive by the parents of Elm Street either over a misunderstanding or an outright lie. What better revenge could Freddy exact on the parents that murdered him than by tormenting and ultimately killing those who wrongly accused him in the one place the parents can't protect them, their dreams? But no, we can't have any of that. More of the same, please. Only not nearly as good. On the bright side of things, and yes, I do think there are at least a couple of bright spots in the movie. We get one of the most brutal moments in the entire series. It's not viscerally brutal, but psychologically brutal. Freddy tells a freshly slain victim that the human brain can function for over 7 minutes after death, which means he has 6 more minutes to play with him. The guy is dead. He knows he's dead in the real world, but will spend his remaining minutes before brain death being tortured by Freddy in his hellish dream world. Yikes. I also like the idea of incorporating micro naps into the movie, and how Freddy's world and our world can overlap at times. And Katie Cassidy's performance is quite good. Tina is a far more well-rounded and personable character than Nancy in the remake, and Cassidy brings her A-game. You want to mix things up? Kill off Nancy and Tina's spot, and let Tina team up with Glenn, who wants revenge against Freddy for killing his crush. You've thrown the audience a curve, and given Glenn something to do besides just be there. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 isn't the worst remake of that era, but it's one of the most despised. And for good reason. It's too bad, because I think the groundwork was there for, at the very least, an interesting reimagining. Shout out to Movie Club member Brian for requesting that I review the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Thank you for your review request, and thank you for being a patron. I appreciate your support. If there's a movie you'd like me to review, follow the link in the description or head over to patreon.com/pizowell and join the Movie Club today. Along with review requests, you'll get early access to videos, the opportunity to join me for patron-only monthly live streams, get cameo-style shout-out videos from Jeremy and I, and much more. Let me know your thoughts on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake down in the comments section below. Is it the worst remake from that era, in your opinion? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you liked this video, please leave it a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you're not following me on social media, those links are in the description. As always, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care, and until next time, peace. Thank you to all my patrons and channel members. I appreciate your generosity and support of my channel. Become a patron today and have a say in what content appears on my channel. Join me for monthly live streams and much more. Become a channel member today and get access to exclusive badges and emotes to use when I stream. Both those links are in the description. Say hello to the internet, Jeremy.
Hello to the internet.